U-joint replacement demonstration. I'm going to demonstrate the Tiger U-joint replacement tool. It comes with a specially designed C-clamp, a tool for pressing out the U-joint caps, and a special pair of pliers for removing and installing the C-clips. Remove all 4 C-clips. Then position the bearing cap removal tool onto the yoke. As you tighten the forcing screw, the bearing cap will push out the other side. Repeat this process for the rest of the U-joint bearing caps. Once the bearing caps have been pushed out far enough, I'm able to pull them out by hand. This allows me to separate the 2 yokes. On the second yoke, I needed a pair of pliers to pull the bearing cap out. Now I need to use the special tool to push the other bearing cap out of the yoke. This allows me to remove the cross. This last bearing cap would not pull out with pliers or by hand, so I'm going to use a small brass punch to tap it out with a hammer. Place the cross into the yoke, then put one of the bearing caps in place, making sure to get the cross on the bearings. And gently tap it into place so it doesn't fall out of the yoke. Now position the cross so it exits the other side of the yoke, giving you room to put the second bearing cap into place, making sure the cross goes onto the bearings. Then gently tap the cap into the yoke so it can't fall out of position. Use the specially designed C-clamp to push the bearing caps into the yoke. When the bearing cap gets pushed in far enough, insert one of the C-clips to hold it in place. Inspect that the clip is properly installed, then rotate the yoke and continue with the C-clamp to push the other bearing cap into the proper location. Then install the C-clip for that bearing cap. Occasionally, the bearing cap has to be pushed back slightly because of the tension that was placed upon the first C-clip. Rotate the yoke and use the C-clamp to push the bearing cap back slightly. Place the drive shaft yoke onto the cross. Put the bearing cap into the yoke, making sure that it gets properly seated on the bearing surface of the cross. Then gently tap it with a hammer to make sure it stays in place. Now use the C-clamp to press the bearing cap into the drive shaft yoke, making sure to press it in far enough to get the C-clip in. Install the C-clip. You should hear it snap into place. Reposition the yoke so the cross sticks out of the yoke part way, enough for you to get the bearing cap onto the cross and into the yoke. Then use a hammer to gently tap on the bearing cap to make sure it stays in the yoke in the position that we put it. Now use the C-clamp to press the bearing cap into the yoke far enough to get the clip in. Insert the clip and take a close inspection to make sure it's seated properly. This inspection shows that it's not quite seated all the way around. I'm going to use the C-clamp one more time to press down on that clip to see if I can push the bearing cap in slightly, just enough so the clip will seat properly into the groove. Upon inspection, it looks like the clip is fully seated. However, there's one area that looks suspicious. I'm going to use a brass tip punch and a hammer to tap on the clip gently to see if I can seat it further into the groove. When you're done, check the operation of the universal joint. It should